Hey everyone, this is Red, your host, and my partner Lori, and this is the Marketing Material Handling Webcast.
Hi everybody, thanks for joining us today. Red, who are we talking to?
Our guest for today on our third episode, and I'm sorry if I don't say his name right, is Anders Boulanger.
Hey, you did it.
How's
That was good.
Sounds good?
Good job, Red.
Sounds legit, eh?
It does.
So, are you like French, Anders?
I actually have, my last name is Boulanger, which is French for baker, and my first name is Anders, which is Swedish or Scandinavian. It's probably pronounced Anders originally, but yeah, I'm named after a Swedish hockey player who played for the Winnipeg Jets. So that's
Very interesting.
a mix.
And-
yeah.
And now you're Canadian.
I've always been Canadian. Yes, that's right.
Okay. Well, welcome to the show. Like we said, this is our third episode. And before we talk about your new thing, the new thing that you're doing, is I would like to actually go back and ask you about kind of like your history, your career, where you were and where you are now, and how you got through to the present. So if you're fine, like talk about your past and experiences, Anders.
For sure. And no one really knows who I am yet, right? You just know my name, so we'll explore that.
Yep. So tell us, Anders, where did you come from and where are you going?
All right. Well, for many years, actually, I have it downstairs. When I was 5 years old, I got a Fisher Price magic set for Christmas that I got from my grandma. And then I started getting more and more magic books and magic sets. And then soon I was doing birthday parties at, 12. When I was about 12, I was doing birthday parties around town. I'm from a tiny town of about 500 people. So it was kind of like the same kids kept showing up at the same birthday parties. I had to change my repertoire all the time. And then I started doing fairs, festivals, went to university, paid my way through university doing magic, performing. And
Wow.
and then I started doing corporate events. So that's kind of, I've been in background in entertainment for quite some time.
Wow.
So and then I kind of then applied the magic and the presentation and the engagement skills I learned through that entertainment into doing what they call trade show magic. Okay, so this is kind of a little bit, Red, how we kind of got connected because of that kind of thing. And here, let me here, I'll show you what this kind of looks like at a trade show. This is here, we got a video. So I stand out on the corner of the booth there, out on the aisle, and I start stopping people. So you can see that little crowd of people. And I'm talking about magic. I'm doing different things, but also talking about the company and weaving in the mission critical, marketing benefits, if you will, that you need to convey. And so then I bring those people back into the booth, and my job is to be lead gen, to stop as many people and upsell their time and attention to going on a deeper dive with our clients. So checking out a demo, booking a meeting, that sort of thing. So the whole time I'm kind of become a little bit of a human A/B test, if you will, seeing what works to stop people and what doesn't, right? And because I'm basically paid to create a crowd of people. And so that's where I started basically codifying engagement. It is kind of the idea. And that's where I've come to now, is we have a company called Engagify, and we teach sales and marketing teams how to be more engaging so that they can connect with their customers and prospects.
That is pretty cool. So you were that person.
Yep.
And then you said you even worked at ProMat, which is the industry where we are, Lori and I. And I guess in that old environment, you were still kind of like engaging people in a physical way. It seems like
things have changed over the last year. But my last show I did was actually Modex, which was over a year ago. So so I have some experience in a lot of different industries because, bringing these engagement skills in and creating a crowd and creating that excitement around a brand is a useful thing, for any company exhibiting. So with that, the ProMat, so I have some experience in the material handling industry. And then of course the idea that trade shows our material handling in general, right? I see, like, Red, when I think of you, I think of forklifts, right? And so I see forklifts all the time at trade shows. In fact, you got to be careful you don't get run over by one, because I go in on setup day and they're like all over the place, right? Bringing in the crates and everything. So
Yeah. And Lori, and like I told you, how I met Anders is Lifto hired him to train our people
Mm-hmm.
in being a salespeople mainly, and having engaging skills, because we're now in the virtual kind of like
That's
prospecting.
right.
So we hired him to, like I said, give some skills, share some skills and tricks for being more engaging. And that's why I suggested to invite him, so that he can
Mhm.
share maybe what he can do for our type of industry and for our people. So I don't know, Anders, if you prepared any slides or anything that you want to show us.
yeah, sure,
Well, I'll
sure.
say, when I was looking at your site, Anders, that was
Mhm.
one thing that stood out to me, where was this piece of virtual meetings now,
Yeah.
and everything from an ideal setup to what tools should you invest in, how do you use the tools. I do think that the virtual setting's pretty intimidating to most people.
Mhm. Well, let's talk about that a little bit. And before we do that, here, let me share this. I do have some slides ready. Luckily, I just whipped this
Hey.
up for you. Okay,
Mhm.
this is the challenge. Before we kind of get into some of the solutions, is the engagement gap and the front line, meaning revenue department, anywhere customer facing, sales and marketing. What we're seeing is people are unaware, untrained, and unremarkable in some cases. Okay, in terms of that engagement piece. And then the prospects on the flip side, they're busy, distracted, no time. They got dogs barking, babies crying. The
Right.
virtual piece is really magnified and widened this engagement gap. And so what we teach companies to do is to bridge that gap, okay, through skills, through technology, through engagifying their content is primarily how we do that. So that's what we're up against, and it's the attention spans. Everyone talks about the attention spans shrinking all the time, right? The fact that attention
Hmm.
spans are of that of a goldfish of 8.25 seconds is what people talk about. And yet we do have focus, because we can still binge watch a Netflix series. Do you know what I mean?
That's
Like
right.
there
Hmm.
is that piece. But what has happened really is that the bar for engagement has been taken up to a new level. If I don't know if the two of you have seen that Netflix show, The Social Dilemma. Have you guys heard of
Yes.
it?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So The Social Dilemma is about developers and some of the engineers behind Facebook, Pinterest, Instagram, and how that platform has AI running in the background to try to bring you back to that platform,
That's
basically, so
right.
they can sell you ads.
Mhm.
Okay.
Mhm.
And so this is optimized to capture our attention. And I'm getting a little bit of feedback too, again, just so you guys can hear that. But what's happening is we want to make sure that we need to up our human skills to compete with everything else, right? Everything, the bar is being raised up.
Yeah.
And Simon Sinek, who I'm sure the two of you have heard
Yes.
of, he talks about that there's human skills and non-human skills. It's not hard skills, soft skills. Okay. And so what's happening is, as AI, and we're just talking about this piece, is that that the AI behind this optimizes that AI is going to take over all the non-human skills. So
Mhm.
what are we left with? We're left with the human skills, and so we must become masters of that, and we're competing with technology.
Yeah.
So that's where
Yeah.
we're coming from. Yeah. So
Sound is good, Anders. Don't worry about it. If that's what you no, sound is coming out good. So
okay, because we were hearing a bit of feedback. So I'm still hearing myself a little bit, and it's probably you, Red, because
okay, let me turn down my volume, but don't worry about the recording, because this is coming out properly on my end. Okay.
I also feel like this is a good virtual selling teaching moment.
Mhm, mhm. I
Okay.
know, and that's one of the things that Anders trained us on is like what equipment to use, what softwares to use, so that
Mhm.
does not happen. So, but
Mhm.
there's no echo in the recording, so we will be fine. Anders, if you want to
Right.
keep going, that's fine.
Yeah, sure, sure. All right. So, so do you guys want to ask me a question, or do you just want me to go off some more?
Oh, okay. No, no, we have some questions. I
Okay.
actually have a question
Well,
about your
yeah.
name before we even proceed to Engagify. Is what about that CSP, and if you can tell us what
Oh,
that
sure.
means.
Yeah. So CSP right down there is Certified Speaking Professional, and so it's the highest earned honor that you can receive as a professional speaker. And it's something like only 9% of speakers in the world have this designation. So it's you just have to kind of have enough experience and check enough boxes, and then through the National Speakers Association, you were awarded this medal. Actually, is what you get. So that's what the CSP. I don't have too many letters behind my name, but those are the three that I've got.
Those are
So
very important. I
Wow.
want to ask you a little bit. So, on your site, you talk about simplifying your message.
yeah.
And I have always thought, marketing's in this great dilemma, especially when we work with sales, is we're asked to put a lot of information into the marketing tools and the sales literature. And so it always feels like this really big dance where we try to come up with a happy compromise between the two areas. So, what would your advice be to us about reaching a good compromise where we're simplifying the message? It's easy to understand, but we're also, working with our sales team to really provide customer information.
hmm Okay, sure. Well, I think Red, we were just talking about this before because I have my cash here. This is a little bit of my enticement to get people to stop because it's a pattern interrupt, and I spike people's
Yeah,
dopamine when I
that's all
use
I
this.
can look at now.
Mhm.
Yeah. And so I talk about how that we literally do pay attention in two different ways. So one of them is with our time, right? The time that we invest to listen to someone or to pay attention. And the other piece is with calories. And the way I say calories, it sounds like, is this a new diet? It's not, but it's the idea that our brains use a lot of kind of computing power, if you will. It's only 2% of our entire body weight, but it consumes 20% of our energy. And
Mm,
so, in a protective sense, we choose things very carefully before we invest a lot of thinking about it. And so
Mhm.
that's why we need to simplify things so that we don't repel people by creating, here's
mm,
a big, $100 word is cognitive backlog. So that's meaning overwhelm is the other word for that, right? So even when I say cognitive backlog, it's like, what the heck's that? It's like,
Well, we all nod to pretend that
it's,
we know what you're
yeah,
talking about.
it's overwhelm.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I see, and because I do messaging with my trade show clients to engagify their trade show booth, is that I send out a message engineering questionnaire. And I'm very specific about how I ask for the information because I've done this long enough to know it's a whole bunch of technical stuff's going to come back. And I'm like, look, I don't
Yeah.
care about all those things. What is the benefit, right? What is that? And that's one of the things we talk about in our trainings, in our courses in Engagify is an acronym called SAVE You. The S is for simple, okay? And I'm going to skip to the U at the end, which is about being you focused, right? It has to be beneficial to the person that you're actually talking with, right? It's either got to be something they puts them in danger because that'll get them intention, or puts them at risk, or it's going to reward them in terms of kind of carrot and the stick kind of thing.
Yeah.
So that's the filter that I use when I start looking at content is what is
Mm.
critical here, what's going to, make
Mhm.
them want to pay attention, right? That gets their attention, that it's focused on them. So how do I balance that? I feel like technical jargon, even within any industry, is a bit of a barrier, right? And
Mhm.
even though they know what it is and you know what it is, you feel like you can just use it I always try to talk about things a little bit lower, like one level lower than I feel like they can take, because then I
Mhm.
don't leave anyone behind, right? It's kind of like that
Yeah.
lowest common denominator, but you're not going to lose anyone because you know your stuff, right? And it's like everyone wants to be. You've heard of the curse of knowledge, right? Like that everyone wants to sound really smart, and the more you know, the sometimes the quicker you lose people because you assume they know that too. I think it's
Yeah.
important we gear down and take down that level to a simpler spot so that we can still say the same thing, but in a way that people can all relate to it. Now,
Mhm.
another piece of that acronym that is about the senses. So what I don't see too much, and it's because of the corporate way of doing things, is we don't talk in terms of seeing like visual, auditory, and kinesthetic, which really paints the picture and puts you into an immersive experience when you talk about something. And putting more of the senses in marketing material is something that, well, I do it in my content in terms of presentations, but that is a way that it actually makes people see, feel, and hear what you're talking about, because that's how we perceive the world. So
Mhm.
simplifying, but bringing in the senses so that people can kind of connect to that material more, um, which again gets us out of that abstractness and more into concreteness of what is it that you're offering.
I got quite a few from what you just said, and if I can simplify that and tell me if I'm wrong, is
There you go. There,
presentation basically.
person knowledge. There we go. I need to simplify even more. Good.
Yeah, free seminar. Well, from what I'm simplify what you said is basically simplify and then talk to the other person, to the customer, more about him than you.
Mm-hmm.
I'm actually developing a virtual delivery experience template right now, and that's one of the things that we were talking about, is because in our industry we call some equipment class one, class two, core equipment, and
So
all of that.
true.
We were and my boss was saying they don't know what that is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like and our reps, we call them OEUEASR, and
Mhm.
they don't know what that is. Just put what they are actually, because
And,
then anybody can understand what
That's
that is.
right.
yeah.
That's what
Mhm.
you said from what I heard.
And your boss, that's the kind of being an outsider. That's where you kind of need that perspective, because
Mhm.
companies bring me in, for the exhibit experience, and I'll be like, I don't know what that is. Like, I have to understand it first before I can communicate it. So I often have to look for those metaphors to simplify the concept, the idea, and then it helps me, then communicate it.
Mhm.
And I work at a trade show called RSA, which is like a network security trade show that's in San Francisco. And I remember one time I was doing my presentation, and I had a crowd. Actually, you know what? Here, this is a slide from RSA, actually. So this
Somebody's
is the
excited.
people. Yeah, everyone's kind of head up and lit up. That's what we want to
Mhm.
do, right?
Mhm.
And I had a woman come up to me at the end of one of these presentations, and she said, "I've watched all of the presentations, but yours
Mhm.
was the only one I could understand."
Mhm.
And the important note was she was not in the actual. She was a spouse of an attendee, so she was such an outsider
Wow.
that everything went over her head, but mine didn't, because I again used the analogies and simplified things, and I used my magic as a visual metaphor, right, to kind of explain what the product or solution does.
Mhm.
And so that's one of those things, is can an outsider understand what the heck you're talking about? That's kind of a good litmus
Mm.
test to know, did you simplify it enough? Because people, if they get lost or they can't follow,
Right.
then you're just going to lose that
Yeah.
compliance or that call to action.
And
You
then
know
even
what it
in our industry, Lori, if you think about it, even with our competitors, they name
Mhm.
similar equipment different way, and
Yeah.
our customers will
Yeah.
is just confused. What is this really? But
Right.
what that really is, that's an electric four-wheel electric forklift. That's what
Yeah.
it is.
Yeah.
But we
We're
call it
not
so
keeping
many
it.
names that are customers get confused. What do you think?
Hmm. When I think about it, like I think about the safety aspect that we talk about so often, and I think we go wrong with the safety aspect of some of the pieces of the forklift. We get really technical and we don't put it in the perspective of what it means to the person operating it
Mhm.
and to the people walking around the equipment, and how this is going to keep them safe. So maybe more storytelling, Anders. I mean, do you get into storytelling, or is it really about the visual piece that you bring in?
So definitely, we have a number of different trainings and different programs that we have, and we can do them, as a webinar. We can do them as coaching. We can have online courses as well, and so
Mhm.
we will talk about storytelling in both our virtual engagement training and our presenting for profits training. And story really is huge, and it's really hot in corporate right now. But
Yeah.
here's one of my other pet peeves is that people think, yeah, we're going to talk about the story, and then it's not actually a story, right? There's no, that's just corporate messaging. It's like, no,
Mm,
that's not a story, right?
mhm.
And so one of the I guess the trends that I see from a marketing perspective, and I didn't think I'd see it in tech because they're kind of on a different level. But there's a book called "Creating Your Brand Story" or "Building Your Brand Story" by Donald Miller. Have either of you heard of that?
No. Mm-mm.
I
No.
mean,
Okay. So he's really about stories in terms of marketing. And so this is his stuff, but I do like this because in the magic that I do at a trade show booth, or as I coach people to virtual present salespeople, we do want to tell these stories, right? We want to kind of
Mhm.
put people into a place. And so a story loop is kind of like creating a problem that needs closure, right? And so Donald Miller kind of talks about the fact that there's a hero, and the old way of doing it was the company was the hero for the customer, right? Like,
Mhm.
I'm here to save the day and
That's
help
right.
you. But that's not really you focused, right? The actual hero is the customer. And so a hero has a problem, which could be a villain,
Mm,
right? What is the villain in this case,
yeah.
right? Maybe it's forklifts that break down, right? Maybe it's whatever that villain is. And they need a guide. And that guide is Luke Skywalker meeting Obi-Wan Kenobi, right? The wise sage, and
Right.
the wise sage then points them in the right direction and helps this hero make a choice, right? And
mhm.
that guide has a plan that first you're going to go do this and do this. And this is basically the hero's the myth of the hero and the hero's journey, I should say. And so then that hero eventually conquers the villain, is self-fulfilled, and lives happily ever after, kind of thing.
And gets a promotion and a raise.
And a
Yeah,
lightsaber. Everybody gets a
and a
lightsaber.
lightsaber. That's right. That's right.
The lightsaber.
So when doing messaging, thinking about the thing that who's the hero, what's their problem, and so
Mhm.
the way I kind of summarize it when I do it is that you've got a problem, solution, result, right? The problem, what is the problem? Who is it for? Here's the solution, and then the result. So that's a very simplified way of doing it. But most of the things that I do here, let me show you one thing. Oops, wrong way. Hang on. There we go. So when we talk about getting a return on your investment because of XYZ solution, right? And this idea, so that I would be talking about the reasons why they get a return. But if you watch, this is going to be more impressive for Lori than Red, though. But watch this. We just go like this, and then we change them to 50. See, to
Hey,
Canadians, we're like, they're still green. I don't get it. What's the deal?
Mhm.
different numbers.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. There's different denominations. Ours have to turn color for us to kind of like.
Yeah, I
Oh,
did see the difference.
Red's like, they're different. I thought they're still ones.
So,
Um,
Anders, I have a question regarding what you just said. What
sure.
is in the ideal world? I'm a sales rep. I'm meeting a new customer. what would be like an ideal flow or kind of like a
Mhm.
template of what a presentation that will have a higher batting average, if you would say a higher
Mm,
conversion? What would be an ideal um, sequence
Mm,
of
mhm.
a highly converting presentation?
a high, wow, you're looking for gold here, aren't you?
You
Yes,
So,
sir.
really, yeah.
Yes, sir.
well, I feel like, I mean, when we work with companies, I like to say that we help the efficacy of your selling. So, you're going to have your certain way of doing sales. We're not a sales training, we're an engagement training. So we just kind of improve whatever it is that you're doing. Now, there is some suggestions I can have for certain things like slides and content and things that are going to help bring people along. Okay. So one of the things that I would first off say, we're mostly presenting virtually right now, is that you want to present yourself in a way that looks good and is on point, right? Like
Mm.
what used to be driving a clean car into a parking lot and
That's so
coming out in a
true.
suit is now what you have in this frame and how you represent yourself, right? So, creating a nice experience that way is refreshing for people. Okay. And this red background that I have here, quick backstory is that we just finished a project with VMware. And VMware is, I don't know how many billions of dollars big, but they're a big company. And I was lucky enough to get kind of a time to pitch what it is that we do in front of about 12 marketing managers and directors at VMware. And so it was kind of like, what do you got? Right. And then you had to do the song and dance kind of like thing. Right. And so I get on there and I'm just kind of throwing stuff at the wall to see what sticks. And in the end, one of them actually said, "Oh, yeah, you know what? You'd be perfect for this new virtual forum we have coming up. Let's connect." And so we ended up winning the business. Now, after we won the business, I heard from them. She goes, "You know what? That day that you were presenting, I was on 3 screens. I was multitasking and I was
Mm.
not paying attention. You came on and that red background. I thought that was kind of interesting. And then she says, and then you leaned in and you talked right to the camera. And I felt like you were talking right to me, even though there was 12 people in the call, right?
Mhm.
And so that got her attention. And so it was kind of the idea that how we did things, not necessarily what was in it, was improved that reaction and improved and created the conversion in that sense. Okay.
Mm.
So there's different, pieces. And so when we talk about engagifying things, some other ideas for your presentations are, we are visually stimulated creatures. Okay. So that in fact, the retinal nerve is connected directly to the limbic system. And so that's kind of like the survival part of it, because we need to be alert in case a lion's coming at us, right?
Right.
So the number one, the most visually stimulating object in 3D space is actually the human face. So first of all, I'm going to say to all the sales reps out there or anyone doing a webinar, turn on your camera, make sure that's on,
Yes. Yes.
because so many people aren't doing that. And then, of course, the people they're meeting with, they're not turning their cameras on.
Yeah.
So it's hard to be engaging if you don't have feedback, right? It's hard
Yeah.
to know
Mhm.
that you're on the right track. And that's why when in my book I write about this, that entertainers are so engaging because they've had a lifetime of audiences telling them what to do and what not to do, right?
Mhm.
And in virtual, we now don't have this feedback very much. If we have feedback, it's the audio kind, right? But
Mhm.
it's the idea that my microphone could die right now and I
Right.
wouldn't know.
Right. Right. There's a
Like
fear factor.
I've got a battery. Like you would have to tell me, or like Anders, we can't hear you. I'd be like,
Mhm.
oh, like what am I sending out? Right? I'm not
Mhm.
exactly sure. And so that's where a lot of salespeople don't have the confidence and the swagger that they would in real life, right? In person. And
And
Mhm.
that's go ahead, right?
yeah, and if I can say something to that, I had a meeting yesterday, and I wasn't. This is a agency trying to pitch to us, and I wasn't like, um, I wasn't intending to turn on my camera, but they came on and both their cameras are on. So I was kind of like forced to turn mine on. So I think that's a good tip for
There's some
all
peer pressure, a
yeah,
little
for
bit.
reps that when
And
you go into a meeting, have yours on. Even if they don't turn theirs on, at least there's that pressure. Personally, I felt that pressure. So I don't know, Anders, if that's a science thing to that. I don't know.
that is a law of reciprocity, really. You're kind of giving them something, and they feel
Mhm.
obligated to turn that on. So that's a one of Cialdini's influence, persuasion laws. One of the other things you can do too is when you confirm a meeting for those salespeople out there, just saying, hey, this is a video meeting, so make sure you have your
Mhm.
camera on. You can put that little note so you can kind of pre-frame it. And then
Mhm.
one of the other things that I've said is I've kind of been collecting different lines and different ways of kind of framing this. And one of them is, it's like, it'd be, if they have their camera off, it's like if we were in a boardroom, and
Mhm.
we couldn't see each other, it would be like we'd have bags over our heads. That would be kind of silly, right? Like we have the ability to see each
Right.
other. Let's turn on
Right.
our cameras. And it depends on the rapport that you have with that prospect or customer, obviously, right? How much kind of tongue in cheek and nudge you can get.
Mhm.
One of the other things, if familiar with the Moravian study, which is 55% of what we say is our body language, and 38% is the tone of our voice, and then 7% is our words. So, by turning on the camera and then being able to see the body language, we're improving our communication by 55%, right? So
Mhm.
well, actually doubling it in a sense, because we were just at the vocal, vocal and the words. So sometimes I'll drop that thing too. It's like, did you realize that 55% of what you're saying is coming through your body language? You don't mind turning on your camera so I can understand you better, do you?
Mhm.
Right?
Mhm.
And so if you come, it doesn't have to be a joke, and you don't have to like, nudge, but it's just from a pure point of like, I want to understand you so I can help you. Could you turn
Yeah.
your camera on so that I
Yeah.
can feel, So, so all of those things, I know I'm not really answering your question, Red, about a high
No,
converting
but
No,
presentation.
this is good. This is
Okay,
good
but
because to me, it's why people were intimidated by the phone, to use the phone for prospecting. And they're still intimidated by the phone. And it's because we feel like we're better in person. We can
Mhm.
get the feedback right away in person. And video, doing this shouldn't be the same way because we have the ability to turn on our camera. In a time of COVID, we don't have to wear our mask when we're online with each other, and now we can actually get a little bit more than we might have actually in person, masked up. So I find it all very interesting. It's some stuff that we know, but we have forgotten about.
Mhm.
And to me, that's the beauty of, let's not be intimidated by this like we were with the phone. This is a
Right.
way to really connect with people.
Lori, can I speak to that for a second too? One of the things you said too about, well, being intimidated, but being out there, the typical salesperson is probably outgoing,
Mhm.
extroverted, right? They can use their force of personality.
Yeah.
That's kind of their superpower, right? And
Mhm.
one of the things in virtual selling now is that it doesn't work the same, right? Like they can't give that big
Mhm.
handshake, and they
Right.
can't do those
Right.
things. So
They
they're
lost
kind
the
of like,
mojo.
yeah, they feel like their hands are tied behind their back, right? And so what we're seeing too is there's some salespeople have basically geared down and like just sitting on the sidelines, like, I'm going to wait till
Mm.
COVID's over. Like if they can afford to do that,
Right.
keep their job. I don't know. But for me, and I think, when we work with companies, trying to inspire them to take it to the next level, what's amazing is like when you're out in the field, you don't really have control of the environment
Mm.
like you do here. And
Mhm.
so I don't have anything up right now, but if I switch my camera here, seeing my setup, and we can talk a little bit about that. But I can have notes and things hanging up here, like all these things that I'd want to remember about the client. I could cheat because no one
Yes.
sees that angle, right? And it's like, if I was a beginning sales rep, like, oh, this is great. I can have my whole,
Yeah.
thing here. I actually have a teleprompter. I could have my pitch, written word for word
Mm.
if I wanted. Um,
Nice.
So there are some advantages to this, but I think it's some of the people just, like we talked about in that engagement gap, unaware and untrained. They just don't know any better. So what do I do? Right.
Mm-hmm.
But like I get jazzed when I get a call and I'm like, all right, like, cause I've got this, right? Like, you know what I mean? Like that's the kind of confidence
Yeah.
that you want to have in a selling situation, right? That
Yes.
you're like,
Yes.
oh, I'm going to wow these guys. So,
Totally,
so
totally.
that's where we need to, I think, take people, and that's what we're helping companies do. So,
I feel exactly what you just described because like sales reps, like they are like very confident. They're like they used to be like I am like I can't say it, but it used to be they were like they bring in the bacon if you
yeah,
think about it. And now that in the virtual world, a lot of them even don't turn on their cameras when they call customers. So there's like you kind of lost that like confidence I feel talking in person and talking in virtual, and that's
mhm,
why we kind of like have you come in and help us because so that to bring that confidence up. And I can also see what you said about the advantages of doing virtual, because what I was saying to our team is like this is not a bad thing because you have an audience undivided attention for like 15 or 20 minutes. If you
mhm,
go in actual real life meet with a customer, the customer might be busy. He might be talking to
Mm.
you, but he's like talk like have other things in his mind about what's going on in the shop. But in virtual, if you schedule 15-minute meeting, he's right here with you, and all you have to do is perform.
yeah.
Is what I'm saying.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So, Anders, what do you see? I guess coming up, obviously the trade show industry went on a pretty big pause for a long time, starting to see a few more things come back in person. So, how are you feeling about it and how it's going to ramp back up? And, how are you pivoting even?
Sure. Yeah. Well, I mean, the pivot really was we were mostly doing trade shows, and in the last year,
Mm, yeah.
it's helping create that engagement with companies. The virtual engagement, like we did with Lifto. We've also have a training called for vocal engagement, so the people are on the phone all the time. How to
Oh,
really
nice.
understand how to use the voice so that they can influence people and use their voice as a weapon. That's their only weapon, really. So that has been kind of our pivot in also doing coaching with sales teams. We're actually coaching the fastest growing startup in Canada, their sales team, and also their inside sales team as well. So those are some of the things that we did in the pivot.
Nice.
Going back to trade shows, yeah, things are starting to open up in the States. I just saw an announcement that June 1st, Vegas will be completely open. So back to
Which is a
pre-pandemic
huge place, right?
rules, right? So
Mm-hmm.
a big show that is not exactly related, but World of Concrete is going to be a big
Mm-hmm.
show in June. That
Mm-hmm.
some of it takes place outside, of course, too. And then the fact that CDC dropped for or vaccinated people, they don't have to wear masks indoors. That's just opening things back up. Orlando has been open for a while. Houston has been open for a while to some degree. So we're just going to see those shows kind of coming back. So I think, the August, there's a few shows in Vegas that I know of that are happening. We thought maybe there would be limitations to how many people would be in a booth, right? So
Mm-hmm.
kind of, depending on the size of your booth, you'd be allowed a number of people. We did hear rumors of people being aisle monitors for a while, where people would not be let down an aisle that was already busy. So there'd be
Mm,
people
yeah.
shopping. But now that the way things are with the vaccine and things opening up, it seems like I'm hearing less and less about any sort of limiting rules, and I think depending if people are willing enough to go to the shows, that's the other question, right? You can have
Yeah,
a
I think
show,
so.
and who's going to show up? Because even well, my last show that was Modex,
Mhm.
that show had a weird vibe because that was when we really didn't know too much about COVID-19, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
Very unknown, and it was just before everything we kind of shut everything down. And I just remember it being so strange that, everyone wants to like put out a hand and shake a
Yeah.
hand. And it was like pulling a gun in that show. It was like,
Yeah.
oh, like you're doing the foot taps and the elbow bumps and the other
Right.
things are happening. So that will be interesting too, to see what is the vibe, what is the feel. I know
Mhm.
people want to get back to in-person events. And so it might just be so much excitement about, hey, we're back. I know that's my trade show industry folks. That's how they're
Right.
feeling, right?
Right.
But one of the things that I've been saying, and if you have any, people who watch this that are on the marketing side of things, going to trade shows, my suggestion is that you just want to celebrate humanity, right? Like this is like, how can you capture and create this experience that it's great to be back, and by doing that, take the best people you can, right? And
Mhm.
just really, it's quality. It might be quality over quantity at this point, right? So just make it as good as you can, um, and celebrate being back in person.
That is great.
Mhm.
Anders, can you tell us or our audience where they can find you? And before you do that, I have a question about your website, engagify.ai.
Mhm.
Is that artificial intelligence? Dot
No,
AI?
thank you for asking. So remember, I had my phone out before, and I was talking about, we're kind of battling AI in terms of engagement with the platforms. Well, traditionally, .ai does stand for artificial intelligence, but when we talk about AI in our
Mhm.
keynotes, in our trainings, we talk about authentic interactions, right?
That's good.
So the idea that we want to be with those people, it's the human skills, rehumanize business. And so having truly authentic interactions is refreshing these days, and
Yes.
being present with people. And so if we can elevate the moment by doing those things, by adding connection, adding emotion, and just being authentic, right? That's and if you've been on LinkedIn, and people might be watching this on LinkedIn, authenticity is everywhere right now. Everyone's talking
Yeah.
about it, but
Yeah.
it's funny
Yeah.
that we have to talk about it, right? We should just be it.
Right.
So one last thing I want to say, and we do this with sales teams when we do role playing in our engagement coaching, is that I will assign a different, we call it an archetype, to each person, and they're going to do like a 2-minute presentation. And to give you an example of what I mean by archetypes, I'll say, okay, you're like a coach, like a sports coach, right? You're a kindergarten teacher. You're a conspiracy theorist, right? And they have to then do their presentation with this archetype in mind. And usually, like, I try to
I
assign
like
one that
that.
is so different from what that person is, right? If
Mhm.
they're very
Mhm.
soft spoken, I'm going to give them the coach, because then they got to be, okay, guys, like this kind of thing. If they are very monotone and they tend to just talk about all their technology like this all the time, and they just data dump, I'll say, okay, you got to be the kindergarten teacher, right? So then they're like, okay, everyone, like now they have to have a lot more vocal variety, and like, because that's how kindergarten teachers hold the kids' attention, right?
Right.
And I tell them it's okay to go overboard with this, because when an actor rehearses something, they will go like full tilt on something, and then they stop it. And when they come back and just do it flat, it has
Mhm.
texture, and it has more depth to
Mm.
it, right? So this is what I was trying to do to get these people kind of out of the box that they've kind of constructed. And some of them will, well, when we debrief it, everyone will say, actually, they'll say, I didn't think I could do that. I didn't think that was me. But then I realized, there's more to me than I thought, right?
Mm.
And so the big takeaway for all of them, and it's actually, it's a neat moment when everyone kind of goes, oh, wow, I can do that, is that to be engaging, I'm not asking you to be someone you're not. I'm actually asking you to be more of who you are.
Mm.
Mm.
Right? And
Really
that,
good.
that makes it more interesting, and it makes it more authentic as well. So
Pretty cool. Pretty cool. So engagify.ai, I guess that's where they will find you. And
you
where
got it.
else,
Yeah.
Anders?
Yeah. No, that's probably the best way to find me. And you can find me on LinkedIn as well. So
Okay, great. Well, Lori, if you don't have any more questions, we can end this
No,
right
this has
now.
been
And
really good. Thank you.
okay, thanks,
Thanks,
Anders.
Fred. Thanks, Lori.
Everyone, we'll see you on our fourth episode. But bye for now.